I like to tailor my consulting and my offers for people.
Mm.
I don't want them to
Yeah.
just look like what everyone else is doing, right? And I think a lot of
Yeah.
people, especially in the real estate space, are very cognizant of that. They're like, I don't want to do marketing that looks like everyone else, right? And so it's all about storytelling and being able to analyze data and understand people and, really lean into sales and understand how the buyer
Yeah.
journey, all those things are things that you can learn from other people, but you can also learn as being a consumer and just being able to reverse engineer the process.
Today is Michael Carpenter, and he is a marketing consultant at Architect Marketing. So, Michael, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It's a great honor.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and get started. Michael, in the most simple way possible, can you please explain to me what a marketing consultant does?
Yeah, simplest is I help guide a client through their journey for improving their marketing and help them develop strategy. And so I'm really there as a guide to just help them get the steps that they need. And typically these are people who already have, maybe a small marketing team, but they really need somebody to come in and just kind of help guide the ship. And so that's kind of the simplest terms. Is I'm there to kind of help them with strategy, building out content
Okay.
processes, operations, all that kind of stuff.
Okay, amazing. So now what kind of made you want to get started in this career path? How did you get your start?
Yeah, so I got started in marketing consulting about 2.5, 3 years ago. And part of that was just because I was working in real estate marketing at the time and was doing some like coaching with agents at the brokers I was working with, was kind of just helping them
Okay.
develop stuff. And I realized like, okay, like I'm helping these agents as my brokerage, but there's a lot of other agents out there. So I was like, but I can make more money if I can
Yeah.
work with all brokerages instead of just one, right? And so that's what really kind of got me into it. So I realized there were people who just really needed the strategy and really needed the knowledge, but they had the tools to actually execute. They just didn't know what to do, right? And so that's kind of how I
Okay.
really got started was just seeing a need in the market and seeing people that needed help and just willing to offer my services. And part of the unique thing that I found was I was seeing a lot of marketing agencies get fired quite transparently because they weren't
Okay.
actually getting the results clients needed. And so they had all these like different things they could do, but they weren't really meeting the need that the client was looking for. And so I was like, hey, instead of putting myself on the hook to get the person the results, I can occupy the space of a consultant and put more of the like I guess execution on the client. And so hey, I'm here as the brains of the operation, but it's up to the client to really execute and help them build a team around it. And so it's kind of self-preservation as well in terms of just
Okay.
seeing a model that wasn't working as well for my particular niche, and just really finding a way to grow my business but also make an impact on other people's businesses.
Okay, amazing. So now, what parts of your job are the most exciting or the most interesting to you?
I think the most exciting is being able to craft a tailored experience, right? I think a lot of
Mm.
marketing people have these paths that they create or these kind of templates, and they just fit people into the templates, right? And so I love being able to really get into a client's story, into their business, and create an offer, create marketing, create content that is unique to them, to their skill set, to their personality, to their experience, and being able to just like, make it unique and make it tailored to their unique, their unique abilities and their unique offer. And so that's
Yeah.
really allowed us to bring forth a product that clients can be proud of and that they don't feel the stress to try to be something that they're not. It's like, hey, let's just use what you
Yeah.
already have and make it better. And so that's really what I have a lot of fun doing. And I have a system that works for like, it's a system that I can apply to anyone, but we have the ability to make it more specific to a specific business based on where they're at.
Okay. So now, kind of on the flip side of that, what parts of the job are harder, really challenging, or maybe just not so fun to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say that the biggest challenge is when there is maybe a disconnect between what the client wants and maybe what they're willing to invest to get that thing. And so helping people understand the reality of here's what it takes to get the results that you want from a marketing perspective. And that may be maybe they don't want to put their face on camera and create content, or
Mm.
maybe they don't want to invest in team members that'll help their workflow go faster. Getting over some of those challenges can be sometimes, frustrating, but you really work with the client and just go at their own pace and what they're comfortable doing, while also challenging them to grow and challenging them to see that, hey, the things that might be uncomfortable are also the things that are going to help them reach their ultimate goal. So yeah, I would say that's kind of one of the bigger challenges that we face at times.
So now kind of going into what the industry looks like, are there niches that you think that people can choose to specialize in within marketing consultant?
Yeah, I mean, you can be a marketing consultant in any industry. Yeah, I mean, every industry needs marketing, whether you're in oil and gas or real estate or
Yeah.
whatever it is that you do. So yeah, I definitely think that there's always room for consultants in pretty much any industry. And then for
Yeah.
anyone looking to get into it, I would say, yeah, finding a niche as quickly as you can is going to definitely help you with lead generation. Just if you can say, hey, I am a real estate marketing consultant, that's more specific than like, hey, I'm a marketing consultant. You know what I mean? And so there are times where you may need to be vague if you're just starting out and trying to figure out, hey, who is it that
Okay.
I work with? But
Yeah.
yeah, being able to like find a niche and really really specialize in that niche would definitely help for people who are really looking to do something long term in marketing consulting.
Okay. And so now, who are some of the biggest employers in this industry? Anyone that comes
Mhm.
off the top of your head? Yeah.
Yeah, so typically, if you're a consultant, it's freelance. Typically,
Okay.
people,
Okay.
yeah. So you're typically working. If you are niche, you're working in your particular niche, and you're just working with businesses that you build a relationship with.
Okay, I
So
see.
I don't know that I'm sure there's some data out there in terms of like
Yeah.
if there are specific industries that hire more freelance. But yeah, I think a lot of times you'll find consultants that occupy like fractional marketing officer roles, like fractional CMO roles, will there actually be like the head of marketing for a company and they're contracted and they're freelance. So there's a lot of different industries that do that, or there's people who are more like myself. I work with more small businesses, so they don't necessarily
Okay.
have a CMO role because they don't have the budget for that. So they use a freelance consultant like myself to fill the gaps they may have in their marketing team.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I see. And so now, before we hopped on this call, I had to do a little bit of research regarding the average income for a marketing consultant. And according to
Mm-hmm.
Google, it is about $76,000. From your experience, do you think this is an
Mm-hmm.
accurate number? What do you think?
Yeah, that's around what I was like my first year. And so yeah,
Okay.
definitely that's pretty accurate. And, like, a lot of that really depends again on like kind of the industry, how you have your pricing set up. Like I said, some people
Mhm.
do contracts, some people do like hourly, or some consultants like, hey, you just you book 5 hours of their time or 8 hours of their time and they bill you for that. Or
Yeah.
you like for myself, I do 90-day contracts. And so hey, I'll come in for a specific amount of time, work with your team, and then we can obviously renew that contract, or if you feel like you got what you needed and you move on. So it kind of just really depends on how people structure their business. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
around the 76 to 100K is probably for someone who's kind of just getting into the industry. And then obviously, the more experience you have, the more testimonials, the more
Yeah.
impact you have, you can go up from there.
Yeah. Okay, amazing. So now, what are some current trends or challenges within this industry, and how do you see it evolving in maybe, say, 5 to 10 years?
Hmm. Yeah, I honestly think that I see it growing. I think there's a lot of people who are exiting the agency space, especially people who are more smaller agencies. So I think the larger marketing agencies that are servicing
Okay.
your Fortune 500 companies, I think
Mm.
those guys have a system and they have a place in the industry. But for people who are more smaller, maybe a 1 to 2 person team, 3 person team, that typically that they just outsource a lot of their web design or their videographers, their photographers, those kind of small type agencies. I definitely think people
Okay.
are realizing that marketing consulting, there's higher profit margins, because when you have to pay a bunch of people to run your agency, like you might make a ton of money, but
Yeah.
you don't get a lot of profit. And so a lot comes in, but a lot goes out too. And so I think you're going to see a lot of people who are kind of starting to be like, well, I could rather just get paid for what I know and what I think in my strategy. So I definitely think the coaching industry is definitely growing really rapidly. And yeah, I think it's a great opportunity for people, especially people who maybe have been doing it for a while. You've been doing
Mm.
independent marketing agency for 10 or 15 years and you're kind of tired of that rat race. I think there's a lot of people that are getting there where they're kind of burnt out and they're going to start doing coaching and consulting as a way to still
Okay.
stay in the space, but also, offer a lot of value.
Yeah. And so now, with all of
Mhm.
that being said, how do you see that you stay updated with the latest developments of your field?
Yeah, I'm always subscribing to newsletters,
Mm.
email threads for industry experts. Also, I do a podcast, and I listen to a lot of podcasts, and so I'm
Yeah.
constantly listening to people in the industry who are doing what I'm doing. And yeah, so YouTube. podcasts, emails, I go to conferences once or twice a year. So yeah, just kind of
Okay.
really at this point, it's really easy to get information. Like we live in
Yeah.
an industry where it's almost impossible not not to stay on top of your
Yeah.
industry. I mean, if you have your algorithm is going to find out what content you're consuming and it's going to give you more of it. So it's really not
Yeah.
hard to stay on top of what trends are happening. What I try to do is think about what are the trends that are happening? How can I innovate so that my clients are bringing marketing and content to the market that's a little bit unique?
Okay.
That's why I said earlier I like to tailor my consulting and my offers for people.
Mm.
I don't want them to
Yeah.
just look like what everyone else is doing, right? And I think a lot of
Yeah.
people, especially in the real estate space, are very cognizant of that. They're like, I don't want to do marketing that looks like everyone else, right? And so there might be a trend that is working, but they don't want to do it because all the other people are doing it, right?
Okay.
So they're looking for something
Okay.
else. And so how do we find what works that's going to get people views, that's going to get people leads, but also is like unique and is actually going to catch people's attention, is going to stand out from the crowd. So that's where I really hang my hat and spend a lot of time and effort and energy trying to help people in that arena.
Okay. And now kind of going into your daily work and your tasks, what is your schedule like? What tasks do you spend like the majority of your day doing? I like to ask, what does a
Mm-hmm.
day in Michael's life look like?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So my creative time for myself is in the morning. So usually I'm
Okay.
getting started around like 8, 9 o'clock ish. And so I like to spend the first couple hours of my day creating my own content to market my business because that is my most creative time of day. Right. So that's when I'm planning my own podcast, or that's when I'm creating, Facebook posts or LinkedIn posts or emails, just really using that time to market myself. And then around noon, one-ish is when I start meetings. And so typically a day for me is
Okay.
like creating content for my own business and then being on strategy calls with my clients, for the rest of the afternoon. And then
Yeah.
sometimes in between that, like working on an action item that I had after a meeting with the client, right? So like, hey, I need you to go do some
Okay.
quick research on this specific thing. So in between calls, I'm doing that research. I try to use like project management tools like Asana or Notion to kind of organize myself, but then organize the client. And so sometimes it's going in there, doing some project management things to kind of keep things on
Okay.
flow. So like looking at due dates and expiration dates. We're also just connecting with other creative people. So I typically, for my clients, I'm outsourcing their content creation to videographers or photographers or web designers. So it's also like working with those people to make sure they're executing the deliverables for my clients well, or building relationships with those folks. So that's kind of how a day in the life of me, as a marketing consultant typically looks like.
Okay. Great. And so now, would
Yeah.
you say that you're able to work flexible hours? Is
Oh
this like
yeah.
a remote friendly type of job, or do you have to go into
Yeah.
an office? What does that kind of look like?
Absolutely. This is like a total, I mean, I'm doing this because it's remote friendly, and
Okay.
I that's the lifestyle that I wanted. I wanted the flexibility. That's why I became an entrepreneur, because
Yeah.
I wanted flexibility over my schedule, over my freedom, to use my time and energy the way I wanted to.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I mean, I was on vacation with my wife last week and was able to had to take some calls for a client really quick. And it was really easy for me to just hop on a Zoom real quick, work through some problems, and then I'm back to vacationing. Right. So, or, if I want to go work from a coffee shop or be in a different city, like it's really easy to do that. And so, yeah, I love the flexibility. And, there are times when I like to be in person with clients because I just think that in-person element is definitely super important, especially when
Mhm.
I'm just getting to know the client and just starting out with them. So I try to spend some time with them in their office when they first become a client. And
Okay.
that's really kind of based on their schedule or my schedule. So I do have some clients that's like almost impossible. Like they're just so busy that sometimes it's impossible for us to be in person
Yeah.
consistently. And so we just do that whenever we need to, or
Okay.
when, quarterly we'll do something fun, those type of things. But yeah.
So, would you say that there are any busy seasons in this job? And if so, what are they?
That is a good question. I think there's like I've noticed this year that Q1 was a little bit slower. And I think
Okay.
that as people shift to the economy and changing just dynamics that are happening in the country, I think that also impacts it in terms of just what people are investing in at times. So I would say beginning of the year has been slower, and typically toward like the middle of the year, when people kind of start looking at their projections and seeing like how their business is doing, that's when people are kind of saying, okay, are we on pace? Are we doing good? What do we need to change? So I've seen like
Yeah.
Q2 be the most fruitful, where people are like, hey, that's when they're like, okay, I need to go and invest, I need to go change something, because they want to set themselves up to finish out Q2 well, crush Q3, and then Q4 is kind of like they're rounding out the year and really looking back on the year. So that's kind of
Okay.
what I've noticed in terms of just how active people are in terms of their marketing and bringing in new team members.
Okay. And so now kind of going into your specific skills and the knowledge that it takes to become a marketing consultant, would you say that
Mhm.
there are certain degrees or certifications that are truly required to get into this role?
No, absolutely not. I mean, in terms of
Okay.
degrees, no. I mean, I my degree was in social work, and
Okay.
so I'm a very self-made marketing person. Like I said earlier in the episode, I mean, you can get information so easily nowadays,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
I definitely took quite a few certificates. I took some Google, Facebook certificates. I did a HubSpot Academy, has a really great resource. And when I first got into marketing, I was consuming all of HubSpot stuff, and so they just have like a ton of really great like beginner
Okay.
level marketing, just kind of get that foundation. That's where I started at. And then I just started growing on top of that. And I've hired consultants for my own self. I've hired coaches. Last year, I spent about $20,000 worth of just on my own education, right? Working with sales
Wow.
coaches, marketing
Okay.
coaches. So just like learning from everywhere that I could get
Yeah.
it, and just seeing other people who were doing aspects of the marketing that I wasn't good at, and just learning from them,
Yeah.
right? And so there's always ways that you continue to grow. And so that's the encouraging piece. If you want to get into marketing and social media and these things, I mean, there's so many resources out there for you to do that really easily. And you'll find that there are a lot of people who didn't start off with marketing and ended up here. And so it's all about storytelling and being able to, analyze data and understand people, and, really lean into sales and understand how the buyer
Yeah.
journey, all those things are things that you can learn from other people, but you can also learn as being a consumer and just being able to reverse engineer the process. I think
Okay.
that's also something that I've used as a kind of a growth hack for my business.
Okay. That's all amazing. But now, do you think that there are specific maybe strengths or talents that someone would have to have in order to be a really good marketing consultant?
Yeah, absolutely. Asking really good questions. So you have to be naturally curious and be able to think about like why something works. And being able to, like I said, being able to reverse engineer things. So that really comes with being really analytical, caring about the details. So those are some skills that immediately come to mind. I also think just genuinely understanding people. So I've really spent a
Okay.
lot of time understanding human psychology and sociology, and understanding why people make the decisions that they make, from a buying and purchasing standpoint, or even just from an engagement standpoint when it comes to content, which is where I spend the bulk of my energy, is really crafting content for
Okay.
clients. So really just understanding like what makes people click, what makes people scroll, what makes people, like or share, like really understanding those things, what makes people open the email,
Yeah.
and being able to, just be analytical. So those are the things that I think initially come to mind. I think also just being able to have empathy and understand from a client standpoint, understanding how to serve someone really well and have that customer service mindset to understand that, okay, like
Okay.
someone's hiring me, they're making a large investment into their business, and I need to be able to have empathy for where they're at in their business and how they want to grow.
Okay.
So that really comes into play if you want to continue contracts, right? So if you want to have clients that stick with you for a long time, you're really going to have to be able to have that relationship building
Yeah.
aspect, that empathy and that customer service mindset to really
Yeah.
understand how to serve someone beyond just what they hired you for, right? So obviously people hire
Yeah.
me for marketing, but I also need to be able to be empathetic when like something isn't going well in their business or they're struggling in certain areas, and like how do you navigate all those things, and to really serve someone really well, as a
Okay.
consultant, I think is really, really important. And like, I mean, I've had clients break down and cry on a call with me, right? And like, how do I
Mhm.
navigate that? Right.
Yeah.
And so how do you, like serve someone through just being human, right? And because all that stuff comes up. And sometimes it's
Yeah.
different in a corporate environment when some of those things aren't as acceptable, but when you're a freelance consultant, at times it's a little bit more relaxed, right? There's a little more flexible. You have a
Yeah.
little bit more control over the environment, and sometimes it's based off the
Mhm.
client as well. But those are just things that you probably would encounter more so in this line of work that you wouldn't encounter on the agency,
Okay.
corporate side of things. Yeah.
Okay, great. And so now we kind of touched a little bit on your project management tools that you use,
hmm
but what are some other tools, technologies, or softwares that you see that you use a
hmm
lot as part of your job?
Yeah, so three that I use for my specific clients is Keep, which is a CRM automation software that we use to automate some marketing stuff. So automate emails, automate SMS messages, but it's also a CRM. So we can kind of track
Okay.
where our clients, like where my clients are, where their clients lead. So being able to track those lead processes and understanding the sales piece of things. I'm also really
Okay.
big on building online communities as part of a lead generator and also a marketing and sales tool. So we use platforms like Kajabi and Thinkific and Mighty Network. Also, School is one that we've used. So using platforms like that to build courses and launch lead generator products or like ebooks, using those kind of platforms has been really beneficial to some of my clients as well. So yeah, I would say
Okay.
those are kind of some of the big ones that I've been using this last year or so.
So now we want to give our listeners a little bit of advice. So what do you recommend that candidates that are interested in becoming marketing consultants do to kind of set themselves apart from other job seekers?
Good question. Well, number one, I would say find a niche. If you're already competent in marketing and you've worked in some kind of corporate background or some kind of agency background and you know what you're talking about, I really think it's like niche, just finding a niche that you think you have a specialty in, and then
Okay.
just literally just make the ask, like just ask for the work. Like that's just
Okay.
like as simple as this. I mean, there's no like magic. It's just like, hey, you need to frame your offer in a way that adds value to the person. So you need to understand like what problem am I solving for someone, understand like what your scope is and like what you do and don't do, because people will try to take advantage of you and try to get you to do more things
Okay.
than what they're paying you to do. So you just need to understand, hey, here's my offer, here's what I do, here's what I do it for, and then go find those people and just ask them. Right. And you'll
Okay.
get better at sales
Yeah.
as you do it, but it really is kind of just like just letting people know what you do. So create your own content if you're not already doing that. But just put yourself out there and tell people what you do, and then at that point it's just like doing the work, and then as you get
Yeah.
clients, people start referring you, and so that's what I don't like, try to make it too complicated. Like it's just like craft the offer, and there is an art to crafting a good offer, and
Yeah.
that's kind of hard to give like general advice on that because it just depends on ultimately what it is that you're trying to do. I really am big on like social media content and podcasting. So I've built my
Okay.
offer and also community building. So I've built my offer based on those three things. So people who have problems in their marketing or sales that fall into the bucket that my core competencies could fix, I go after those folks and I talk to them, right?
Okay.
But if someone
Okay.
came to me like, hey, I need you to create an email campaign, like I know how to do email, but that's not really my specialty. So I wouldn't spend my time doing that because I'm like,
Okay.
hey, I might be able to do a good job for you, but I may not, right? Because that's not really my
Okay.
specialty, right? And so it's just really
Yeah.
understanding what is your specialty, what are you really good at, and just focus on that, and then talk to people who
Okay.
want that,
Okay.
and that'll help you get started.
Okay, amazing. And so now, what are
Mhm.
some books, resources, or programs that you would recommend our listeners look into if they're interested in this job?
Hmm. Okay, so in particular to this job, I like there's like I don't know that any resources specifically for a marketing consultant. There are a ton of resources in terms of learning marketing out there that I definitely would recommend. And so if this the advice I would give for someone who's transitioning into this is just literally do some Google and YouTube searches to get started. And like I could give
Okay.
you a ton of books and things, but like it's really one of those things where I think it's not as hard as you would think to find the information that you need. And
Yeah.
so just kind of think of like, hey, what questions do I have, and do some Googles and some YouTube searches, and there you'll start consuming information. And at that point, you just kind of can
Okay.
just stack some stuff. And so I'm trying. There's a couple of books that I'm thinking of that I can't remember their author's name, so I'm going to give them to you, and y'all can put them in the show
Okay.
notes. That I think would be
Perfect.
beneficial to some people. But yeah, that's pretty much what I did, right? And then there's also
Yeah.
just like coaches out there. You can also reach out to myself if you have questions. I will gladly just like share what I know. And yeah.
Yeah. So now, if you could talk to your younger self when you were kind of just starting out with your career, what advice would you give them?
For my younger self, it would all be about mental health. Like I
Okay.
would give myself grace and just be like, hey, don't be so hard on yourself. And I would spend time really learning to love myself better.
Okay.
Entrepreneurship is really hard, and you go through a lot of rejection, and there's a lot
Yeah.
of ups and downs. And so with that, like sometimes your mental health can take a hit because you start to internalize like, oh, well,
Yeah.
this person didn't want to hire me, so that means I'm not good enough. And that's not actually true. And so something as a young entrepreneur, I just kind of took those hits and just like stored them in the back of my mind, and then they just grew really big. And then I had like a meltdown, right? Where I was like, oh my gosh, I can't
Oh,
do this anymore, right? And so I would tell my younger
yeah.
self, like, yo, you really like you are good, like you can do this, right? And so, like you said earlier, just like even just the average amount that a marketing consultant makes, like I was above average in terms of how much money I made in my
Oh,
first year. But like I was looking
okay.
at like what people ahead of me were making, and I was like, okay, I suck at this, I can't do this. And I really was like, in
Mm.
terms of people who do my job, like I'm right there on par with them, right? And
Yeah.
so there was
Yeah.
things like that that like I just didn't really recognize until a couple of years into this. And so yeah, I would just go back to myself and just be like, hey man, like, love yourself, grow, learn how to appreciate what you've already done. And just don't be so hard on yourself.
So yeah, that is great advice. Actually, I think it's super easy, especially like nowadays, to kind of put yourself down and compare yourself to everyone out there. So yeah, I think
Hmm.
that is great advice. So
Yeah.
finally, where can people reach out to you or where can they follow along with your work?
Yeah, absolutely. You can follow me on Instagram at Michael the Architect. It has a unique spelling, so you can just check that in the show notes. You can
Okay.
also find me on Facebook and LinkedIn at Michael Carpenter. And then my YouTube channel is Architect Network. I have a podcast network, so that's where you can find more information about me on there. I have a podcast called The Blueprint on the network. And so, yeah, that's where you can check out
Nice.
more information about me.
Great. All right. Well, Michael, thank you again for joining me on this episode and for sharing your experience as a
Yeah,
marketing consultant. Your insight was greatly appreciated. Thank you again.
absolutely. Thanks for having me.
You just got one episode closer to learning about the world of jobs out there. To explore the rest of our career categories and find your best fit, go to jobdictionary.com to sign up for the beta users waitlist. Then subscribe here to find the next episodes coming out this week. And as always, drop us a comment, review, or message to let us know how we could better attune our episodes to your specific needs. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, Threads, Pinterest, and wherever else you're on socials to go get our short, snappy preview reels that expose you to new job options every day. Because here at Job Dictionary, we believe your big aha moment can be just one scroll away. Go check it out and get out there. Cheers!